to the show. This the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.
What is up, you guys? We're going to be recapping UFC San Diego. As you guys now know, these recaps get their own individual segment here at the channel. They get their own video, and we go a little bit more in depth with these recaps. We're going to be talking about who each fighter should be fighting in their next match, at least a recommendation from my side of things. Please do give me your feedback in the comment section if you agree with my matchmaking, or if you guys have any better matches or any better matchmaking that you could do yourself. If you think there's a fighter that makes more sense for a specific fighter, please don't hesitate to hit the comment section up below. Of course, we're going to be going more in depth into the bets that we targeted upon this card, or upon all these cards. And hey, in regards to the bets that we had last night, I feel very good about them because they all cashed. We had a perfect 5 for 5 clean sweep. We had some major underdog plays in our official plays. So we'll be getting to all that here in a second. And yeah, I thought the card was pretty good overall. Of course, the main event did deliver, and this is what the fight card was really all about. Marlon Vera and Dominick Cruz. That was the big fight on the card. Nate Landwehr and David Onama. That was one of the better fights that we've seen in a long time. So that definitely was enjoyable to watch. But you know, before we jump into the first fight, you guys, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit the like button on this video as well, and catch me on all my social media platforms. Of course, on Instagram at MMA Fortune Teller _, where you can get all types of content coming at you guys. You see me over here at the Dolphins game, drove all the way out to Tampa, had the fights on my phone as I was watching my Dolphins come through and cash me a preseason play. It really was just a great night overall. And again, you can catch all types of content from me over on Instagram, but you can also catch me on Twitter as well at the MMA Teller. So go catch me over there. In the first fight of the card, we had Youssef Zalal taking on Blackshear. Of course, Blackshear making his UFC debut. Youssef Zalal dropping down in weight, coming down from the featherweight division to the bantamweight division, looking to reinvent himself after going through some turbulence as of recently. We talked about the fact that Zalal is still very young and still has a lot of room for improvement. He's had the benefit of being able to grow up in the octagon to an extent, making his debut at a very young age. So I had the fight play out. I thought that Zalal should have showed some more urgency early in the fight. Did play out closely the first 2 rounds, but Blackshear, in my opinion, took those first 2 rounds. And in the mind of the majority, he did take those first 2 rounds. But in the third round, that's where Zalal really stepped on the gas and did some damage to Blackshear. Got him down on the mat, ended up mounting him at one point in time, and really was looking to take him out. It was a little too late, though, but it was enough to score a 10-8 round in 2 of the judges' eyes and push this fight to a majority draw, which, as you saw when the referee was raising both of their hands, Zalal was very happy and very relieved to hear that. Whereas you saw Blackshear kind of had more of a disappointing look on his face, based on the fact that if he didn't get 10-8'd in that third round, he would have took the fight. And obviously, after had just recently taken that beating in the third round, he didn't look too happy there. But you know, it was a decent fight, and both men will learn from it. They're both young. They have a lot of room for growth. Who do we want to see these men fight next? This was a little bit of a tricky one for me here, because both guys coming off the draw. You had a guy in Blackshear who just made his UFC debut. And then again, Zalal just having one fight down in the bantamweight division that went to a draw. Looked good in the third round. But, you know, in the first 2 rounds, it was whatever. You know, 2 fighters that stuck out to me that I wouldn't mind to see either of these men fight with is actually Ronnie Lawrence, who I know is coming off a loss, but a very talented fighter. I wouldn't mind to see a guy like Ronnie square up with a guy like Youssef Zalal. In fact, that's a fight that I really like, those 2 men right there. And you also got a guy like Tony Kelly, who's coming off a loss. Tony Primetime Kelly's coming off a devastating loss to Adrian Yanez. I wouldn't mind to see Tony Kelly square up with a guy like Blackshear. I wouldn't mind that fight at all. So those were the fights that stuck out to me. You guys let me know what you think about those matchups. We'll see who both men get matched up with in their next fight. But the fight does go to a draw. In the next fight, we had Josh Quinlan taking on Jason Witt. Was at a catch weight of 180 pounds. I had a major play here on Josh Quinlan. In fact, I had 2 plays on Quinlan. You guys should have known this, because we talked about the fact last week, and I had 3 official plays locked in, but 2 of them fell apart. in regards to one of the fights falling off the card, which was the Quinlan fight. So you guys, you put the math together, and obviously I had 2 plays on Quinlan. And what do you guys think they were? I had them straight up, which I grabbed them nice and early at minus 215 through 3 units at it. And then I also took them at even odds to get a knockout through 1 unit at that as well. And you guys know how I felt about this fight. I thought there was a clear path for Quinlan to get the knockout. He's been knocking out everybody that he steps in there with. I know he doesn't have a lot of experience, but when he's in there, he looks good, in my opinion. And then you got a guy in Jason Witt that's been finishing every single one of his losses. And then the cherry on the top was the fact that I had an insider source that's one of Quinlan's main training partners that gave me word that Quinlan looked phenomenal. Once I heard that, I was really feeling good about it. So I was all over Quinlan here. And again, Quinlan has shown major promise on the feet. He carries some serious power, and Jason Witt is just there to be hit, and he really can't take those hits as well either. You mix that together, and this is a guy that consistently gets put flat down face first. So that was my first 2 plays to kick the card off, and they both hit simultaneously. It was a great feeling, great way to kick the card off there. And Quinlan is a beast. There were some question marks about the whole drug testing thing. He had the failed drug test. But like I said, one of his training partners told me that he's been looking better than ever. He's literally been looking better than ever, wreaking havoc in the gym. And I didn't really feel the need to worry about that failed drug test too much. He's looked good on IG. You see him, and I've seen him in interviews as well. And this guy just seems to I like the way that he took in the fact that he failed the drug test. He took credit for it, I guess, if you want to say it like that. He took responsibility for failing that drug test. He didn't try to beat around the bush. And I liked his demeanor as he talked about things. He's just strictly business. He knows what he needs to do moving forward, and you saw what he did there. So big victory for Josh Quinlan. And who do we want to see Josh Quinlan in there with next? I would like to see him in there with Orion Kosi, who just came off that victory that we had an official play on against Blood Diamond. Obviously, this is a little bit of a different fight. Obviously, you could say Quinlan is a striker just like Blood Diamond is, but I think that Quinlan's a more well-rounded fighter, and I would definitely favor Quinlan in a spot like that against Kosi. But that's a fight that I think would be fun. Kosi always brings the fight. He's willing to exchange a little bit on the feet. He's willing to brawl it out a little bit. He also likes to try to mix in his wrestling. We'll see if Quinlan is still up to par, stuffing takedowns. And I like that fight there. As far as Jason Witt goes, I would have liked to seen him fight a guy like Johan Linnes, but Linnes is already matched up with Darian Weeks. Who do we want to see Jason Witt matched up with next? And nothing really stuck out to me too much here. I mean, if you want to throw Kosi versus Witt, I think that's a great matchup as well. Actually, I think that's not a bad route as well. The thing is, obviously, Jason Witt coming off a loss, Orion Kosi coming off the victory, you're probably not going to see that. But as far as from a matchmaking standpoint, that is a fight that I wouldn't mind to see. I think if we're going to find an opponent for Witt, we're going to have to drop back a little bit further down in the rankings. Maybe you match him up with, let's see here. We got a lot of fighters that are not even in the UFC here. Maybe you want to throw him in there with a guy like Diego Lima, who's coming off that loss to Matt Brown. If he gets another fight, he's coming off 2 losses. That's a fight that I wouldn't mind to see. Or even Carlos Condit, if Condit's still even doing his thing. I forget the latest for Condit, obviously being up there in age. Those would be the matches for Witt. We'll see Witt get knocked out one more time if the UFC wants to see that, and then he'll get cut. So that's how I feel about that. But a great way to kick the card off with both those plays hitting simultaneously. The next fight took place in the flyweight division. We had Tyson Nam taking on Odi Osborne. You guys know I picked Tyson Nam to win this fight. He was an underdog. You guys remember I said I got to give you a little spicy dog to kick the card off. Now, no official play on Tyson Nam for me here. I don't want to say in retrospect that I should have made a play on him because it really wasn't on my radar. I thought that he was live to take this fight, but I was looking at my other spots, and it really wasn't an official a play that I was eyeing to be an official play, if I'm being real with you guys. Odi Osborne is a solid athlete. He's a good fighter, but we talked about the fact that he does have flaws in his defensive game. We've seen it time and time again. We've seen him kind of freeze up in there and kind of make those deer in the headlight type of moves. We saw him get hit by that flying knee by Manil Cape. We saw him get caught in a guillotine by Brian Kelleher. Now we've seen him get starched by a guy like Tyson Nam. We talked about the fact that Tyson Nam does carry some serious power. I was very happy to see Tyson Nam get this victory. He's a class act. He's been around the block for a long time. Now, Tyson Nam has actually won 3 of his last 4 fights, with his only loss being way of split decision versus Matthew Schnell, whose stock is really high right now. Odi Osborne, people still respect him, right? He came into this fight as a big favorite. Odie is now, he's dropped 2 of his last 4 fights. He's 2-2, so he has some room for growth still. We won't turn our back on Odie completely, but again, we talked about the fact that he does have those defensive flaws at times. So who do we want to see these fighters match up with next? I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. In fact, you're going to notice that Odie Osborne is pretty respected. You know, he's at ranked on Tapology as the number 19 flyweight in the world. Coming off that loss, you'll probably see a little bit of a drop there with Tyson Nam right behind him at 22, and maybe you see them kind of swap spots. As far as Tyson Nam goes, coming off that victory, who do I want to see him fight next? I would love to see him battle with a fighter like Jeff Molina. I would love that fight. I think that one stuck out to me right away. Jeff Molina doesn't have anybody matched up with him right now, and of course Jeff Molina starting to make some noise. You know, talking a little bit outside the octagon more so these days, and obviously when he's in the cage, he always puts on a show. The Glory MMA Fitness product. Throw him in there with the tough veteran like Tyson Nam. I would love to see that fight play out. And then as far as Odie Osborne goes, coming off the loss here Saturday night, I think you can throw him in there with a fighter like Rogerio Bontorin, who's coming off that recent loss that he just took to Brandon Royval. Maybe you want to throw him in there with Zalgis Zemagulov, who's coming off 2 losses, a tough fighter that always brings it. Those were fights that stuck out to me there. And also another fight that kind of stuck out to me, I should say, is the Bruno Silva versus Tyson Nam. I think Bruno, the Bulldog Silva, is a very talented fighter, and he hasn't been in the cage so much recently, but he's still a fighter that I respect, and I would love to see that fight as well. So that's where I was going with the matchmaking in regards to those 2 fighters. Gabriel Benitez gets the knockout, in fact, the first round knockout over Charlie Ontiveros. Try to tell you guys that Charlie Ontiveros is not a UFC caliber fighter. I was pretty emphatic about that. I saw somebody kind of poking at me a little bit saying, oh yeah, watch Charlie get the knockout over Gabriel. Don't be surprised when you see that. And I told him, yeah, let's sit back and see. I'm going to be in my chair. I'll be watching that one. I was not expecting to see that. I know Charlie has some knockouts throughout the years over very low caliber fighters. I did not see him going out there and knocking out a guy like Benitez. And in fact, it played out just like I thought it would. Benitez went out there and starched him. And it was great to see Benitez get a victory like that, because Benitez is a fighter that's had a little bit of a rough road as of recently. He goes in there and battles against some of the best fighters in the division, and he's just a fighter that always brings it. I love watching Benitez fight. He cracks. He has some good power, good pop in his shots. I like his unorthodox southpaw type of striking, and I'm a fan of Gabriel Benitez. I've been for a while, so I was happy to see him get that victory. I'm not going to give you a matchup as far as Ontiveros goes, because I think that's the last time we'll be seeing him in the UFC. And as far as Gabriel Benitez goes, this fight just stuck out to me. I would love to see him in there with Meerschaert, a fighter that we just had an official play on, a big underdog play. He came in there and got that big knockout over Steve Garcia. That's a fight that stuck out to me. I would like to see Meerschaert versus Gabriel Benitez. I think that would just be a real show. I think that they would throw down on the feet, and it's a fight that makes sense to me. Nina Nunes gets a big victory in her retirement match against Cynthia Cavillo. Looking at it in retrospect, due to the fact that it was going to be her last fight, I mean, it was a huge victory. It was a split decision victory. It looked like the majority of people gave Nina the first and third rounds, where some people had Cynthia winning that second round. It was a close fight. And obviously Nina won't be being matched up with anybody moving forward. Whereas Cynthia has had a tough road as of recently. Cynthia has now lost 3 fights in a row. Losing 4 fights in a row. The Tapology did not even adjust this yet. That's a loss to Nina Nunes here. Before that, a loss to Andrea Lee. Before that, a loss to Jessica Andrade, and then of course Caitlin Chookagian. So losing to some upper echelon fighters in the division. But Nina Nunes, I don't know if Nina Nunes is so much one of those upper echelon fighters. I'm more referring to the first 3 losses. Nina Nunes looked decent here, and she has shown signs of being a solid fighter throughout the years, but as of recently hasn't looked the best. But I think she knew this was the last time she was going to go in there and battle it out. I think she took this training camp very seriously. We saw how Amanda Nunes just looked in her rematch with Juliana Pena. So I think it kind of made sense that we were going to see a really good version of her there. So no match for Nina there, but for Cynthia, I would actually like to see her take on JJ Aldrich. I think that has the makings to be a good striking affair. I'm a big fan of JJ's. I think that JJ has some real technical boxing and technical striking. I would like to see her go in there and battle with the girl in Cynthia, who, although has lost 4 fights in a row, still has a lot of respect in the rankings and whatnot. She's been fighting some of the better women. So I would like to see JJ try to rebound from that tough loss that she just took against Erin Blanchfield, who we all know is a very talented up-and-coming fighter. So that's the match that I would do right there. We had a split decision victory here for Martin Buday over Lucas Breski. This was a fight that was a little controversial. I saw some people that lost some money on this fight that were very disappointed it did not go their way. Breski came out in this fight and looked pretty good in the first round. Seemed to be the quicker fighter. His hands looked a little bit faster and more crisp. As the fight went on, Buday had some moments as well. He landed a couple big shots here and there, was kind of pressuring Breski. I thought this fight could have went either way. It was a very close fight. I've seen the thoughts of a lot of the MMA media. A lot of the MMA media was torn on this fight. I saw them going multiple ways here as well. It was a close fight. I don't really think that either man loses too much stock as far as like Breski getting the loss there. I don't think that his stock goes down too much. It was his UFC debut. He was coming off that long layoff with the failed drug tests and all that. So I do think that he can still bounce back. He has some room for growth as well. And Buday gets that victory there. So whether you agreed with it or not, he gets that victory. So he can try to take that momentum and move forward. I would like to see Buday go in there and take on a guy in Josh Parisian, who's coming off that victory over Alan Budat. I would like to see that matchup. I think that would be a good matchup for him. And for Breski, like I said, Breski coming off a loss, but some people thought that he did enough to get the victory. So depending on how you look at that, I wouldn't mind to see him in there with Carlos Felipe, a guy that favors his boxing as well. I think that they could put on a little bit of a show. Wouldn't be opposed to that matchup there. I really wasn't too. I didn't have too much conviction in matching either of these fighters up with anybody. Nothing really stood out to me, very much. But those are some fights that stuck out to me to an extent. So I'll pick those fights for them. How about Angela Hill winning a closely contested matchup for once and actually coming in as a pretty hefty underdog against Lupita Godinez, Lupi. Angela Hill was right around a plus 280. So she really was a dirty dog here. Lupi, you guys know a lot of people respect her game. A lot of people are high on her, but she's had some questionable performances here and there. This is another one. Angela Hill was on the attack this entire fight. She was the fighter that was really pressing forward, moving forward, pushing Lupita against the fence, using her pitter-patter type attack. And we know that Angela Hill has some decent striking. Of course, that's her bread and butter. She has rounded out her game, obviously, throughout the years. Lupita was not able to have enough success with her wrestling, and Angela Hill gets the job done. So, Angela Hill is no spring chicken, but this was a very big victory for her career, and I don't think that she has any plans on going anywhere. So, this is going to help her out as far as getting her some fights that are of recognition, fights that are worth of talking about. And of course, that's what she wants to do, right? She wants to have people excited about her fights. She was on a 3-fight losing skid before finally getting this victory over a respectable opponent. Who do we want to see Angela Hill fight next? I actually want to see her fight Emily Ducote, the fighter that just came over from Invicta and put on a phenomenal performance against Jessica Penne. She looked really, really good, really promising. I would like to see Emily Ducote tested against a crafty veteran like Angela Hill. That's the fight that I want to see. There's not a lot of fights that you can say that you want to see with Angela Hill as far as some of the more recognizable names, because she's battled with so many of those women already, unless you're talking about rematches and whatnot. So I want to see her versus Emily Ducote. As for Lupita Godinez, who still seems to be a promising fighter, coming off a loss now. We already saw her in there with Jessica Penne not too long ago, right? A couple fights back, so we don't want to see that fight. Karolina Kovacevic, I know she's coming off a victory. Again, I'll say it again. I know they don't always do fighters coming off a win and a loss. They don't always match them up like that. But I'm somewhat interested to see Karolina Kovacevic take on Lupita Godinez, if that's something they want to do. Or a fighter that is coming off a loss, the Karate Hottie, a fighter that has a big name as well. Maybe Lupita gets that fight. I'm not necessarily sure that's the route the UFC is going to go. Of course, The karate hottie has a recognizable name. I don't necessarily think they're going to reward Lupita with that type of fight, but those are some matchups that I wouldn't mind seeing, unless you want to drop down even furthermore. But again, you're talking about fighters that are coming off wins and whatnot. Like I would love to see Corey McKenna versus Lupita Godinez. But again, you're talking about fighters that are coming off different types of outcomes in their fight. But I think that's a good fight. Two young, promising fighters. Again, even though Lupita's coming off that loss, I think that she has shown that she's a decent fighter. So I don't know. We'll see what's next for those two women. All right. And then in the next fight, we had Gerald the Meerkat Meerschaert finishing Bruno Silva. Don't get it twisted. Although he did finish him with the submission, which is basically all Gerald does whenever he wins a fight. He's subbing guys left and right. He really set it up with his striking, which was pretty impressive, especially if you understand that he was down at Sanford MMA for this fight camp, working on his striking extensively, and to see it come in and actually be implemented in the fight against a very tough fighter like Bruno Silva, a guy that carries dynamite in his fists. You guys know I felt like Bruno Silva was going to come out and get the knockout over Meerschaert. That's what I was favoring. But he was coming in as a big favorite. I thought the line was slightly off. Of course, we got to respect Gerald. He's been shown to be very, very tough. He's durable. He's always willing to pull off an upset. And hopefully you guys weren't attacking this fight on Bruno Silva where the line was. If anything, maybe take Bruno Silva for a finish in this spot if you can get a better line there. Personally, I stayed away from this fight. And Gerald Meerschaert looked really, really good. Had some early success with the body kicks. He was whipping those body kicks, but also, again, lighting them up with his hands and hurting them bad and pulling off that choke. So who is next for both of these fighters? This I'm excited to talk about because Gerald Meerschaert is now he's now going from this guy that's just kind of like this journeyman type of guy to a guy that's really starting to get some momentum, in my opinion. Let's see if we can find Gerald Meerschaert here on the Tapology rankings. He's at 17, and this is obviously before they take into consideration the victory. These have not been adjusted. As you see, they're not too quick with it at Tapology. You see it shows him coming off that tough loss against Krzysztof Jotko. But before that, 3 victories in a row. So we're talking about a guy in GM3 that's won 4 of his last 5 fights. Who do we want to see Gerald Meerschaert fight next? Of course, he just lost to Krzysztof Jotko. Don't expect to see that. Dricus du Plessis is coming off a big victory over Brad Tavares. That was a fight that was very entertaining. This is a fight that sticks out to me. I would love to see Gerald Meerschaert versus Dricus du Plessis. I think that fight makes a lot of sense. What do you guys think about that? And as far as Bruno Silva goes, I still think that Bruno Silva is a very entertaining fighter and a guy that brings it. He's coming off 2 losses, but again, he had a respectable performance against Alex Pereira. Who do we throw Bruno Silva in there with? A lot of guys are matched up around this area. A lot of fighters already have fights on the horizon. Uriah Hall just retired. That obviously ain't gonna happen there. Julian Marquez coming off that devastating loss to Gregory Rodriguez. That is a fight that makes some sense. And in fact, I think that's probably the fight that you make. Or maybe we see Rodolfo Vieira, the black belt hunter. Maybe we see him in there against Bruno Silva, kind of a striking versus grappler type matchup. Although, do take note that Rodolfo Vieira has been working on his striking, has been looking better as of recently. Those are the types of fights that I would make with those guys. How about the first round knockout of Priscilla Cachoeira over Ariane Lipski? Another underdog that came through. Priscilla Cachoeira. That's now 3 devastating knockouts that she's had in her last 5 fights or so. She is showing that she's a fighter that carries some serious power. We talked about that, right? Of course, I did pick Ariane Lipski to win this fight. I thought Ariane Lipski would have the edge as far as fluidity and speed in her striking. We know she's shown some wrinkles with her grappling, but we definitely talked about the fact that Priscilla Cachoeira carries power. Just coming into this fight with those 2 devastating knockouts that she's already had as of recently, you just don't see women doing those types of things in the cage. So it's definitely noteworthy. She goes in there and she does it again. And now it's something serious to talk about. We also talked about the fact that she's kind of a disrespected fighter. She kind of has a narrative as a scrub of a fighter based on the way that she entered the UFC. She had some tough performances. but you could definitely see that she's rounded her game out and she's really excelled her game, and especially for what she does best, and that is go in there and land the big shot, land those big shots. She could take a big shot. She's extremely tough and durable. I think that this fight is really going to put her on the map. She's starting to get a lot of respect, and that's going to also jump me into who I want to see her fight next. I'm willing to throw her up in a fight very much above her. I'm willing to jump her through the rankings. Personally, I think with the performance like that, there's no reason why you can't match her up with some of the more well-known name fighters. I really believe that. You know, I look at Maycee Barber, who's absolutely doing her thing right now. Now, also take note, this fight took place in the bantamweight division at 135 pounds. It was kind of a catch weight scenario, of course, with the issue with the fight being pushed back a week. So I'm assuming that she's going to go back to flyweight. Both girls, we'll see what happens with that. But I would like to see her thrown in there with Maycee Barber. How about that? I would like Maycee likes to duke it out a little bit. I would like to see them throw down. I don't know if the UFC rewards her with a big fight like that right now. There's really not a lot of names that you could say that you want to match her up with. A lot of fighters are tied up already right now. She might have to sit back and wait otherwise. But as far as fighters coming off a victory, I mean, maybe we see her in there against Antonina Shevchenko, who's coming off that victory against Courtney Casey. That's a fight you could do. Or maybe Godinez Silva, who had a great UFC debut. Those are the types of fights that I think we're talking about when we're talking about matching Priscilla Cachoeira. And I think it's more realistic you get one of these types of names rather than a Maycee Barber. I think Maycee Barber is going to be filtered towards the top of the division here soon. She's been really looking good. I think the UFC might want to see a little bit more from Cachoeira. So maybe we see a fight like this. I think the Antonina Shevchenko fight probably makes more sense when you really think about it. Striker versus striker. I want to see Cachoeira gifted with those types of fan-pleasing types of affairs. She's deserving of it, and we're deserving of it as fans. So give me the striker and Antonina Shevchenko. I think that sounds fine. And then for Ariane Lipski, who we should see somewhere around here. Here she is, ranked 44 in Tapology. She's coming off a loss now. I don't know if Poliana Botella is still hanging around the UFC after coming off that loss against Godinez Silva. That one would be a fun one to watch. If you guys catch my drift there, I wouldn't mind to see that. But I don't know what's going on with her. She might be cut from the UFC here. I do think that Lipski will hang around, although she's now lost three of her last 4 fights. But she's a looker, and she brings the fight, and I wouldn't be shocked if she gets another opportunity. Maybe we do see her get thrown in there with Poliana Botella, who also brings the fight, just hasn't really been looking that good as of recently. Not a lot to talk about as far as the matchmaking there, but we'll see how it goes for these next two. In regards to Lipski. Cachoeira, yes, but in regards to Lipski. So we'll see who they're matched up with next. My buddy, Azamat Murzakanov, comes through for me once again. And in a similar fashion, too, getting a 3rd round knockout finish, just like he did the first time around. Only this time it was a little different. In the sense that he went in there and pretty much dominated this fight from start to finish. I believe there was a 10-8 round in there. Even going in before that finish, really was pressuring Devin Clark. This was an official play of mine, like I said. We're going to pull it up here in a second. But of course, the other play I was talking about that we cashed was the big comeback that he had against Tefon and Chukwi. So here we had a 2.5 unit play on Azamat. I grabbed them at -150, which is actually when the line started to dip. This was the last play that I put together. He was right around a -170 for the most part during the week, and I saw some action coming in on Devin Clark. Actually, I had a couple messages from people asking me what's going on with that. Why is there action coming in on Devin Clark? He was much bigger at the weigh-ins. People were definitely skeptical about Azamat's performance in his UFC debut, where he was losing that fight before pulling off that phenomenal finish where he landed that flying knee. I was more than willing to take a stab on him, if you want to call a 2.5 unit play a stab, at a -150 line here. He has shown that he is talented with his boxing. He is a solid striker. He is a well-rounded grappler. I know Devin Clark is a strong wrestler himself and at times can exploit fighters that are not up to par there. Azamat is up to par there. Although he doesn't always go that route, he's definitely polished with his skill set there, and I thought that he'd be able to stuff those takedowns from Clark. He'd be able to break off the fence and work his striking, where he's deceptively quick with his striking and deceptively fluid. This is a guy that really knows how to do some work on the feet, and we saw it there just this Saturday night. So big shout out to Azamat Murzakanov for coming through. Now I know exactly who I want to throw Azamat in there with next. I feel like I have a solid matchup for him. I want to see him fight Carlos Olberg, who's coming off a couple big time victories, taking out Tafana Nchukwi and Fabio Charant. The Charant fight wasn't as pleasing to the fans as the Nchukwi fight was. The Nchukwi fight, you saw Olberg is really starting to find his stride. He got some confidence in there, and he went in there and got the fight finished. Now, so that is the fight that I want to see between those two men. I want to see Azamat Murzakanov and Carlos Olberg. I think that has the makings to be a really good fight. Both guys now have 2 victories, I believe. Yes, 2 victories inside the octagon at this point in time. Of course, Olberg does have a loss as well. Believe that, the Bruno Oliveira fight was the fight on Dana White's Contender Series back in 2020. So I think that fight makes a lot of sense. For Devin Clark, Devin Clark's only won 1 of his last 4 fights. So if he's going to be hanging around, I know another guy that's only won 1 of his last 4 fights, and that's if he's still hanging around in the UFC. And I think that both men should still be on the roster. And you lock him in there with Tafana Nchukwi, a guy we just talked about. Put Devin Clark and him in there, kind of a striker versus grappler type matchup. And I think that has the makings to be a fun fight in the light heavyweight division, which we know delivers time and time again. That fight probably would be an eventful fight. We probably would see a knockout by Nchukwi. But if not, maybe we see a knockout of Devin Clark on Tafana Nchukwi, who's been looking pretty bad in there as of recently with his defense and with it as far as his chin holding up and whatnot. So lock those 2 men in there together, and I think that's the route there. Now, how about this fight? We had the strawweight matchup, 2 UFC newcomers, Yasmin Jauregui and Yasman Lucindo. Now, Yasmin went in there, handled business in the first 2 rounds, was looking pretty good with her boxing and whatnot. And then the Brazilian came on pretty strong there in the 3rd round. A lot of people gave Lucindo the 3rd round. 2 judges gave her the 3rd round. 1 judge did give Yasmin all 3 rounds. But, I mean, these 2 women are tough. And they threw down. And, again, Yasmin, we talked about her boxing skills. I mean, she's a ferocious girl. And both girls also making their UFC debut and getting a main card slot. So that was a pretty big fight for both women. Who's next for these 2 women? This is a little bit tough, right? Since they just burst in the scene like this. Who do we want to see these women matched up with next? This one was a little bit tougher for me. Let's see here. Make one on the spot. We got Yasmin right now. She's at 38. She's going to be making the jump up here. Coming off the victory. I think that you could throw her in there. I mean, Sam Hughes is already locked in there, going to be locked in there with Pierre Rodriguez coming up. Why not throw her in there with Randa Marcos? Randa Marcos, who has a name in the game. She still wants to fight some of the younger and tougher fighters. She's never backing down from a challenge. She's coming off that victory against Lavinia Souza. She's a 500 fighter, but we know that doesn't really sum up who Marcos is. I think that's a fine fight to make right there. Or throw her in there with Vanessa Demopoulos. I wouldn't mind to see Demopoulos get pieced up a little bit there. And you also got Corey McKenna. So I think there's actually a couple different ways you can go at that. But I think that any one of these 3 women right here around this range from the 27 to 29 would be a nice matchup for a fighter that shows some promise. And as far as Lucindo goes, she's coming off a loss. You give her one of the more lower level fighters in the division. Obviously, she needs to get a victory, and we'll see what the UFC does with her there. Now, how about this fight is already ranked the number 34 best MMA fight of 2022, instantly jumping up towards the top. Definitely worthy of that accolade there. This fight was awesome. It was the fight of the night on the card. David Onama and Nate Landwehr really went at it. Of course, David Onama had a lot of early success. He hurt Nate really bad. Nate just showed that he is as tough as nails and started to take over the fight as Onama kind of lost a step. After using that early explosion to try to stop the fight, he definitely lost a little bit of his gas, and Nate Landwehr was just warming up. The train wheels, the train, I guess you call them wheels, right? The train wheels, those little things that are on the wheels, little fucking, whatever you want to call it, started chugging along. and he started picking things up and started really putting it on Onama. Did some work down on the mat, used some ground and pound, was having a lot of success on the feet. But I think it was more due to the fact that he was the more fresh fighter in there. Well, David Onama is a very talented striker. You saw that he was all burnt out, so he wasn't really able to use proper technique. And although he still landed some big shots as the fight went on, he really wasn't able to put enough on them to hurt Nate like he did in the first round at that point. Now, one of the judges called this a 28-28. I don't know where he gets a 28 from a 28 to a 28, because Nate Landwehr easily won 2 rounds, and you're telling me you're going to give Onama, a 10-8 in the first, and then you're not giving a 10-8 to Nate in the second, I believe it was, where he did the most damage. That ain't right. So again, the judges just, they're on their stuff right there. I'm sure that judge was rooting his boy Onama on, and unfortunately for him, he wasn't able to pull the string tight enough to make that happen. It didn't really make sense to me. Nate Landwehr, I did not have him to win the fight. I had Onama, although he was a big favorite. I didn't feel comfortable with his line. We talked about that. The line was high, as Onama still needs to prove more. He's young. He's a talented striker, but we know that Nate Landwehr, he just has that X factor. He's extremely tough. We've seen him go in there, take a lot of big shots, use his wrestling, and there's definitely that type of potential for him to go in there and use his wrestling to kind of control Onama and make this a sticky fight, and played out a little bit more excitingly, but still, I would never have felt comfortable putting a play on Onama there. Personally, but I think that Onama still has a lot of room for growth, and he'll bounce back, and he will be rewarded for putting on a performance. So, who do we want to see both these men fight next? I think that the decision for Nate Landwehr is a little bit easier since he was calling people out, and I saw a fighter that actually is accepting of that fight. If you guys didn't see that, so whenever he was in the octagon in his post-fight speech, he was calling out a couple of fighters, but in particularly, he called out Billy Quarantillo. You guys can correct me there. I know sometimes the L's are silent, sometimes they're not. So Billy Quarantillo, Billy Q. I'll just call him Billy Q. Billy Q posted on his Instagram. He's ready to go. He says that New York sounds nice. Towards the end of the year, whatever month it was, there's a fight card going out there, and Billy Q's ready to go out there. Now, Billy Q's coming off a loss. I don't know if there's some history between the two guys. I know that Nate also called out Shane Burgos, which would also be a fire fight. Real quick, Shane Burgos, he's coming off a victory, right, and a crazy fight against Charles Jourdain. Maybe the Shane Burgos fight makes a little bit more sense since he's coming off a victory as well, and Shane Burgos brings the fight like no other. And you got a guy in Nate that could actually stuff Shane's takedowns in case Shane tries to go the more boring route, because sometimes he will use the grappling if he's getting touched up a little bit. We saw that in his last fight, but he still brings it, and that's a fight that I would love to see. So you can either give me the Billy Q fight or you can give me the Shane Burgos fight, but I love when you see a fighter calling his mark there, and I have no problem with that. Now, let's see if we could find David Onama out here somewhere. You're going to find him right here, ranked 44, going into this fight, I do believe. Stock is not going to be going down after this loss. It shouldn't. He put on a show. Who do we want to see him fight next? Let's see. I'll give you guys a spontaneous pick right now. Like I said, his stock goes up in my opinion, so I have no problem with looking up and above. Which again, take these rankings with a grain of salt. Once you start coming back to the late 30s and 40s, these types of rankings can really be, these are really based on opinion. I think there's a lot more room for flexibility with where these fighters could be. Here's a fighter in Sang-Woo Choi, the Sting, who's coming off 2 losses, but that doesn't really describe who he is as a fighter. He always puts a show on as well. I would love to see the very talented striker in Sang-Woo Choi versus David Onama. In fact, that is definitely a fight that I would like to see. That's the fight that I'm matching up if I'm the UFC. And what do you guys think about that one? And then, of course, we had the main event of Marlon Chito Vera versus Dominick Cruz. I had 2 official plays on this fight here, and I did something that I don't typically do. So this was a stressful fight for me here. I'm going to get to my plays real quick before we even get into the fight. So I locked in Marlon Chito Vera to win this fight inside the distance. I grabbed it at plus 175 very early in the week before the fight. And there wasn't a lot of prop bets that were available at the time. And I did notice right around after the fact that I locked this play in and passed it out to my boys that roll with me here, my official plays. I did notice that we saw a line of plus 300 Marlon Vera to win via knockout. Now, you guys do know typically I like to go more the inside the distance route because we see a lot of times fighters will hurt their opponent, and although they almost knock them out, a lot of times when the fighters hurt very badly, they'll give their neck up quite easily, and a fighter will go in there and just pull off the sub. Saw that again with Gerald Meerschaert on this past card. We just saw that recently, not this past weekend, but the weekend before. We saw that with who's that talented kid? The kid that was eating the hamster at the house party who cleaned his life up. Terrence McKinney. Terrence McKinney. We saw that with Terrence McKinney, right? Hurt his opponent, was just playing with him, but then just took his back and choked him out. So typically I do like to keep the inside the distance, but when I see a discrepancy from a plus 175 all the way up to a plus 300, then in that case, it's definitely worth taking the knockout, especially in regards to a fight like this where the reason why I was taking Marlon Vera was I thought for the fact I felt that he was going to hurt Dominick Cruz on the feet. Yes, he could have hurt him and subbed him, but it wasn't like I thought, there was a real high probability that he was going to go in there and sub Cruz. Cruz has shown to be good defensively there and whatnot, but as of recently, Cruz has been looking aged. He keeps his hands low. You see how he dips around side to side. Vera is a sniper. He looks for that big shot. We saw what he was just doing against Rob Font and their battle. And when I saw that plus 300, I was all over that plus 300. So yeah, I was pumped up for this fight. And, this was me watching the fight at the Dolphins game. I had it on my phone right there. I was going nuts. People were looking at me like I was crazy. I was jumping out of my seat, recording videos. In fact, I'll give you guys a funny story real quick. Right behind me, there was a cop that found me and the people I was with a little annoying. We were celebrating the Dolphins game. I don't know if you guys saw what happened with the Dolphins, but they were up by 2 points. And at the very end of the game, it was 3rd and 22. We couldn't stop them all the way on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers side of the field. They got this miraculous first down. They drove the whole field. They get into a somewhat of an easy field goal range to win the game. And this cop was, I guess, watching me record and kind of started to tease me a little bit by saying, "Oh, look, that sucks, doesn't it?" He kind of gave me a funny look because he thought they were going to win the game. And he was trying to bust my balls because we were yelling, "Let's go Dolphins," and this and that. Well, if you didn't see what happened, the Bucs kicker kicks the field goal. It's good, but the Dolphins hit timeout. The coach said timeout, so he had to re-kick that kick, kind of iced him a bit. The next kick hits the pole, bounces back. As soon as I look back, the cop already turned his back, was walking out to the inside, the AC part over there in the mid part of the stadium, and I did not let him go. Followed him. I saw him going down the escalator, and I literally looked from the top, and I said, "Hey!" I caught his attention. He looked up. He knew I caught him, and I said, "Did you see the kick?" And he was pissed. He didn't really have too much of a friendly look. He kind of looked away, but a guy that was taking it serious, and I got him good. So this is a quick, funny little story there. But I was going crazy when Marlon Vera won this fight, and I'm a fan of Chito's. I like Chito, man. He's an awesome dude. That's now 4 fights in a row. He's taken out, and I mean really taken out, knocked out 2 legends of the game in Frankie Edgar and Dominick Cruz now. The Rob Font victory was a big one. Davey Grant as well. Put some respect on Davey Grant's name. He's a killer. The Sean O'Malley victory, the only man to go out there and brutalize O'Malley and defeat him like that. Chito Vera, he's right there at the top of the division. Who do I want to see him next? I mean, there's not a lot of guys above him, right? And if you talk about some guys that are even below him that are very talented, a lot of these guys are all tied up. In fact, they are all tied up as you look here. Just took out Cruz, just took out Font. Meanwhile, you got, Merab Davashili. He's about to fight Jose Aldo this upcoming weekend. TJ Dillashaw's fighting for the belt. Corey Sandhagen's fighting Yadong Song, who's towards the top. You got O'Malley and Yan. Everyone's tied up. So I think that I can't really give you a name of who I want to see Chito Vera fight. I think that Vera has to chill out for a little bit, see how these fights play out, and then we're going to have to come back to that pick because it's going to be a little bit too hard to give him a pick. I mean, I don't want to say I want to see him in there against Ricky Simone. I don't think that's the route Vera wants to go. I think that he's trying to make a push towards the title right now. And although Simone is really good too, but Simone still needs another big win or so. Maybe not. I mean, I don't know. He's a little bit further back in the rankings. He's a killer. But maybe you make that fight. I don't know. I don't think that you don't do that. But again, you wait for a bigger fight. Now for Dominick Cruz, Now, I don't believe he hung up the gloves, right? I didn't miss that, because again, I was at the game. I didn't watch the post-fight speech. I didn't give Cruz a chance to get in the mic. I saw Vera get in the mic. I don't think Cruz was in the mic, but hopefully I don't sound like a fool. I don't think Cruz talked about stepping away as of now. You guys let me know. Did I miss that? But I expect Cruz to come back into the octagon. And if Cruz really wants to make another run, if he wants to still make a push, again, he was on a 2-fight winning streak, just lost to one of the best fighters in the world. If he really wants to hang tough and still be a stubborn fighter, to try to do something at the age that he's at, throw him in there with Rob Font. And that's the fight to make. Both guys coming off a loss. Two guys that are still towards the top of the division, and they bring it every time. That's the fight that you make, in my opinion, if Cruz is still hanging around. So what a main event that was. And Dominick Cruz, if you saw that head kick, Cruz dipped to his right and ran right into Marlon's left head kick. I believe that's how it played out, and just shattered Cruz's nose. If you didn't notice that, broke his nose, landed right on the mark. And if any of you guys have ever been cracked in the nose, if you ever had your nose broken, or even if you haven't had it technically broken, right? I mean, I've been cracked in the nose before, damn hard. I've been headbutted in the nose before, where blood was coming out of my nose like a faucet. And I don't know, I didn't technically break my nose, I don't think. I don't know. I didn't get x-rays, but I mean, it wasn't crooked or busted up like that. But if you ever got hit hard in the nose, man, dude, your eyes you can't open your eyes, and your body kind of goes into like a weird phase. And although I'm sure that Cruz's brain was rattled for sure, I mean, he was knocked out also, I mean, the impact of that kick, but I'm sure the fact that his nose shattered like that, he was just in a different state, and just completely off his rocker and face first down to the canvas. That was a legit knockout. And also, do note that Tapology has that as the number 81 best knockout of 2022. So instantly jumps right into the top 100. A big time knockout there. And a hell of a fight. All right, guys. So that's going to wrap up the recap of UFC Fight Night San Diego. A 5-for-5 night betting. Once again, we will pull up the work that we did here. 7.93 units of profit on the card. Of course, the most enjoyable one was that plus 300 line that we got on Marlon Vera. Also, the plus 175 line. Both those really, really paid dividends at those underdog odds. The Quinlan knockout at even odds. And then attacking Murzakanov and Quinlan straight up, putting a little bit more units on them. It really was a solid night of betting, and it was an enjoyable night for me. Again, as a diehard fight fan, doesn't matter if I'm watching a football game, watching the Dolphins and Bucks game, if I'm driving out there, doing a little trip. Nowadays, you're able to watch the fights. At least I am. If you guys don't know how to do that, you should know how to do that at this point. You can have the fights going on your phone. I got a nice big old screen on my iPhone Max, whatever you want to call it, iPro Max. It's a big screen, and I'm just chilling watching the fights as I'm watching the game live. So that's what we do, man. We don't miss any UFC action. So that's what it was this past Saturday. All right, guys. So I appreciate every single one of you guys checking in for the recap. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the show. You guys can expect my upcoming prediction video to be out to you guys by tomorrow. Working on that as we speak, and working on finalizing the official plays for this upcoming weekend as well. I want to get those done by the latest Monday morning. We'll have those done and wrapped up. Definitely got some spots on this upcoming card. So, all right, guys, that'll wrap up the show here. And I appreciate you guys more than you'll ever know. You guys know I like to say that, and I will continue to say that. Appreciate all you guys. Please hit that like button on your way out. And you guys have a great rest of the day. If you're watching this early, or if you're watching this at night sometime, have a great rest of your night. Sleep tight. Signing out. Teller.
Welcome to the show. This is the MMA fortune teller. Yeah.
The MMA fortune teller.
The teller.